What if I told you that everything you perceive as reality might just be a meticulously orchestrated illusion? You believe yourself to be autonomous, yet, in truth, you follow invisible trajectories charted long before your emergence. Peculiar, wouldn't you say? But it's precisely at this juncture that true awakening begins. The question is, are you ready to look beyond the obvious? For countless years, my existence mirrored that of many, convinced that success was a matter of sheer dedication, pure luck, or academic credentials. I found myself entangled in a cycle of incessant toil, bills to pay, and disillusionment. Until I grasped that what truly governs our lives isn't external circumstances, but rather what is deeply rooted within us. You can immerse yourself in studies, exert yourself diligently, devote yourself fully, but if your subconscious holds the belief that you are unworthy of prosperity, the outcome will invariably be the same. I recall the period when I believed life was a succession of inevitable obstacles. I watched people around me progressing, and deep within me, something cried out, "Why not me?" Yet, that very thought was quickly silenced by an even more imposing voice, "You aren't capable, you aren't worthy, this isn't for you." That voice came from within, and the most frightening part was that I placed my faith in it. I spent a significant portion of my youth convinced that I was born to live modestly, to merely survive, not to thrive. And do you know what's most peculiar? The world seemed to confirm my perception at every turn. Finances never balanced, projects failed, opportunities slipped through my fingers. It was as if the entire cosmos conspired to validate what I conceived about myself. Everything began to transform when that volume, Think and Grow Rich, landed in my hands. Initially, I didn't grasp what was so remarkable about it. It seemed like just another self-help treatise, filled with appealing phrases. But one particular passage resonated repeatedly in my mind: whatever the mind of man can conceive and believe, it can achieve. I reread that phrase dozens of times until, one day, something profound within me shifted. I realized my life wasn't a product of chance, it was the exact reflection of what I deemed possible for myself. And it was as if a veil had been lifted from my eyes. From that point onward, I began to analyze my own convictions with the precision of a researcher. I noticed that every idea, every sensation of failure, every justification I concocted for inaction, was merely an automatic repetition of what I had been taught to think. I recalled the times I heard adults declare that money doesn't grow on trees, that life is truly hard, that few ever truly succeed. Those declarations metamorphosed into internal truths, silently shaping my reality. And then I understood that, as long as I carried these concepts, no matter how much I exerted myself, my subconscious would always find a way to lead me back to square one. Have you ever pondered why, even when everything seems to be going well, something happens and things fall apart? It's as if an imperceptible limit exists for your progress. That limit is your self-image. I resided within that restriction for many years. I'd look in the mirror and discern only an ordinary individual, talentless, without a clear purpose. And the universe confirmed precisely that. It was then I understood that the key wasn't in seeking more information, but in becoming someone who genuinely felt they deserved more. I embarked on a silent self-observation, directing my attention to my thoughts and the physical sensations in my body. When someone spoke of prosperity, I noticed a discomfort. Upon witnessing someone succeed, I'd feel a tightness in my chest, a mixture of envy and disbelief. That was proof I didn't believe I could be like them. My body betrayed what my mind tried to conceal. And it was at this moment that things began to shift. I decided that, even without full conviction, I would act as if I truly believed. At first, it felt strange. I'd repeat to myself, I am capable, I am prosperous, I am worthy. The words sounded hollow, but I persisted. Because I understood that, to recondition the mind, one must insist until the new perspective becomes more habitual than the old. And, as time went on, I began to notice subtle changes. My posture shifted, my tone of voice grew firmer, and opportunities started to emerge. Mere coincidence? No. It was the manifestation of a different resonance. When I altered how I viewed myself, the world, consequently, changed how it treated me. People started to perceive me differently, and I began to attract distinct circumstances. That's how my inaugural venture came to fruition. I had no prior experience, no academic background, no initial capital. My sole asset was a renewed conviction that it was feasible. And it was this belief that led me to resign from a position in the fire department and establish a cleaning company that, in its first year, generated over $100,000. Others called it luck. I called it perception. The truth is, nothing outside of you needs to change for your life to transform. It is you who needs to evolve. Everything you observe, your career, your financial situation, your relationships, is merely a reflection of what transpires within you. You can express the desire to prosper, but if, deep down, you believe that triumph is dangerous or that you don't deserve it, your subconscious will find a way to push that reality away. Not because it wants to punish you, but because it has been conditioned to protect you from the unknown. Most people don't understand that the subconscious mind doesn't distinguish between the tangible and the conceptual. It reacts to what you feel as true. Therefore, it's not enough to think positively. It's essential to feel positively. When you start to feel deserving, even before witnessing the outcome, the universe begins to conspire in your favor. And this process is gradual. Initially, it assesses your consistency. It seeks to determine if your belief is genuine or if you're merely experimenting. I went through this test countless times. There were periods when I considered giving up, moments when the familiar internal murmur returned to declare, "You weren't born for this." However, each time I perceived it, I reminded myself, this voice isn't mine, it's the echo of others' convictions that I once embraced as truth. And then I inhaled deeply and affirmed, I choose to adopt a different perspective. And it is precisely at this point that metamorphosis begins. In the precise instant you decide not to react in your habitual way. When you opt for a new thought, even without concrete evidence of its authenticity. When you act with faith in the imperceptible. This marks the moment the cosmos begins to align with you. I discovered this through lived experience, stumbling, striving, and failing. And each time I persisted, existence rewarded me with greater clarity, more purpose, and superior results. Currently, I understand that an idea serves as a seed, and emotion acts as the moisture that nurtures its growth. If you irrigate notions of apprehension, you reap scarcity. If you cultivate faith and appreciation, you reap profusion. The enigma lies in tending to your inner sanctuary daily, until the transformed reality blossoms spontaneously. For the truth is straightforward, you don't materialize into what you desire, you become what you truly perceive yourself to be. It took me a considerable amount of time to understand that the environment around me was neither my adversary nor my ally. It merely functioned as a mirror, reflecting everything I accepted as authentic within my being. For various periods, I adhered to the idea that external conditions dictated my achievements, that the scarcity of opportunities, my surroundings, or even predestination worked against me. However, none of that was true. Everything that manifested externally was simply the precise echo of my internal feelings and convictions. When I emanated apprehension, uncertainty, and insufficiency, life returned to me more situations that validated those emotions. When I harbored self-doubt, the cosmos reverberated that uncertainty through impediments, disillusionments, and obstructed paths. It was a profound realization to ascertain this. Suddenly, I understood that all external occurrences were simply a consequence of what I projected from within. Financial deficits, elusive opportunities, broken relationships, everything resonated at an identical frequency. It was as if the cosmos communicated, "I'm merely present to you what you deem authentic." This perception proved painful, yet simultaneously emancipating. For if the external realm served as a mirror, then I possessed the capacity to alter the image reflected. And this transformation didn't depend on luck, nor on individuals, nor on the passage of time, it depended exclusively on me. Upon commencing a diligent observation of my thoughts, I discerned the extent to which I remained trapped in an adverse thought pattern. I yearned to prosper, yet, simultaneously, I feared failure. I sought affluence, but felt remorse for desiring more. And the cosmos, loyal to my internal disposition, provided me with precisely what I emanated, a blend of aspiration and impediment, progress and regression, optimism and disillusionment. I was engaged in a non-verbal struggle between what I verbally expressed wanting and what I genuinely considered myself worthy of. The undeniable truth is that vibrational energy does not deceive. You might declare, "I believe," yet if uncertainty, apprehension, or resistance lingers within you, that's the message the universe truly receives. Everything begins and ends with resonance. To achieve prosperity, it's essential to experience it internally, even before it manifests in your life. However, common misconception lies here: feeling prosperous isn't about masking an adverse situation, rather, it's a deliberate choice to embrace a renewed emotional state, even if external circumstances haven't yet caught up with that inner reality. I began practicing this exercise myself. Every morning, before leaving my home, I would look at myself in the mirror and declare, "Today, my energy will be one of abundance." I'd inhale deeply, feeling the flow of air, and strive to visualize what it would be like to live the life I aspired to. Initially, it felt like a fantasy, but gradually, the feeling gained authenticity. I noticed a shift in my posture, my voice grew more resolute, and those around me reacted differently. It was as if the universe was picking up on this new frequency and reconfiguring itself to harmonize with it. I encountered a striking pattern. On days when I felt in harmony, secure, and grateful, everything seemed to flow effortlessly. Business activities developed organically, I met ideal individuals, and even minor challenges resolved themselves with ease. However, the moment fear crept in, everything would come to a standstill. Crucial calls were postponed, deals fell apart, opportunities vanished. Vibration is an ethereal form of communication, and the universe understands every subtlety that comprises it. Some might attribute this to chance, but that interpretation is inaccurate. Quantum science and neuroscience already demonstrate that existence is composed of energy across various frequencies. Your thoughts and feelings emit waves that connect with the surrounding quantum field. When you emit fear, you summon circumstances that feed that apprehension. When you emit confidence, you attract experiences that bolster that conviction. The physical plane is merely the materialization of the vibrational plane. And this stands as one of the most potent cosmic laws. I recall a time when I was striving to solidify this mental perspective. There were mornings when the fear of losing the little I had was so intense that I'd wake up with a constricted chest, enveloped in an inexplicable distress. On those occasions, I'd remember an essential principle: it's not the emotion of fear itself that destroys, but rather the uninterrupted dedication to it. So, closing my eyes, I would affirm, everything I need is already in transition. The universe is embracing my belief. And, little by little, the apprehension would dissipate. It was at that moment I understood that genuine conviction isn't about believing when things are going well. Faith is maintaining an elevated energetic frequency even in the face of apparent collapse. It's proceeding with certainty while the external environment doesn't yet mirror the desired reality. It is precisely at this juncture that the universe evaluates your consistency, and that's where countless individuals falter. They believe for a while, but upon realizing that conditions aren't changing swiftly, they revert to the vibration of uncertainty. And then, the pattern repeats itself. Changing your vibrational frequency is a daily regimen. It's akin to exercising a muscle that's been neglected for a long time. Initially, there's discomfort. However, the greater your dedication to the practice, the more intrinsic the process becomes. One day, you wake up and realize the pretense is unnecessary. You genuinely feel abundant, experience serenity, recognize your worth. And that's when your worldview shifts. Not because of an external transformation, but because your current vibration aligns with what you've always yearned for. I often say that the universe is impartial. It doesn't pass judgment, make choices, or distribute punishments or rewards. It simply reacts. It reacts to what you perceive as your intrinsic reality. And the truth you cultivate within yourself, whatever it may be, will invariably find a way to express itself on the external plane. When you achieve this profound understanding, fear dissipates. Because you realize you were never at the mercy of circumstances, you always held the reins, even if you were unaware of that power. True transcendence begins the moment you assume this responsibility. For at that precise instant, everything that seemed unattainable begins to set into motion. The right people emerge, opportunities manifest, and the course of existence resumes its natural flow. And then, for the first time, you experience the ability to deliberately create. It's not about good fortune, nor coincidence, it's vibrational coherence. And when you harmonize with the frequency of what you desire, the universe is compelled to mirror precisely that condition. I still vividly recall that period of my life when every single aspect seemed unattainable. I was cleaning offices, spending hours scrubbing floors, polishing surfaces, and when I glanced at the clock, time seemed to stand still. My body was fatigued, my mind heavy, and an inner void seemed to scream out. I'd observe my surroundings and notice people in identical situations, repeating the same motions day after day, devoid of perspective, as if their fate were already sealed. It was then that a question began to nag at me: what if there's a different path? That question transformed everything. It became the spark that ignited a flame within me, a craving that robbed me of my usual sleep. At that stage, I lacked financial resources, academic qualifications, and influential connections. All I had left was an aspiration, an inner stirring, profound aversion to the idea that life was limited to that reality. And it was in this spirit of dissatisfaction that I began to deeply question myself. How does an individual who earns $100,000 annually think? What do they experience upon waking? What are their convictions about themselves? I didn't know the answers, but I started to fantasize. Every day, before heading to work, I would imagine this figure, self-assured, calm, moving forward with a clear purpose. And, little by little, I began to emulate him. My behavior was as if I already embodied that person. It didn't matter if my clothes were dirty or my pay modest, deep down, I maintained a renewed identity. Upon entering a corporate environment, I no longer saw myself as the cleaning staff member, but rather as someone absorbing knowledge about entrepreneurship, analyzing how successful individuals thought, expressed themselves, and acted. I dedicated myself to observing every detail, much like an apprentice before mentors who weren't even aware of their instructive role. At first, the situation was strange. The disparity between my current condition and my fantasies was colossal. I projected prosperity, but my financial resources barely covered fundamental needs. I declared abundance, yet I still faced hardships. And it is precisely at this point that most people give up, not understanding that the universe doesn't react to urgency, it reacts to perseverance. I pressed on even in the absence of visible results. Daily, with unwavering dedication, I nurtured that state of mind. I conducted myself, communicated, and even moved as if achievement was already an inherent trait of my being. Progressively, the situation began to respond. One individual introduced me to a client, then another, and what started as a modest cleaning venture expanded rapidly. In a period of less than 12 months, my business generated an income exceeding $100,000. I didn't change the nature of the activity, but rather the vibration with which I performed it. I had learned one of the most elementary and impactful rules: the universe doesn't grant what you desire, but rather what you embody. What happened to me wasn't witchcraft. It was the logical unfolding of a vibrational shift. By changing your self-perception, the external world readjusts its view of you. Existence begins to reorder itself to mirror your newly acquired consciousness. And this metamorphosis isn't tied to formal education, connections, or chance. My story is a testament to this. I abandoned a mundane occupation, devoid of any prospects, and built something that granted me autonomy, solely through the determination to think and act as if I were already the person I aspired to become. Many people ask me about the crucial factor, and I invariably reply, the secret lay in experiencing the emotion before witnessing the manifestation. While most await perfect circumstances to begin their belief, I placed my faith even before any conditions presented themselves. I didn't wait for the outcome to feel abundant, I felt abundance, and the outcome materialized. This reversal of priorities is the determining factor. I understood that the unconscious doesn't differentiate between what's factual and what's conceived. If you cultivate a feeling vigorously and continuously, it assimilates it as true. And once the subconscious accepts it, it begins to build scenarios that validate that truth. That's precisely what happened to me. My physical being, my emotions, my demeanor, everything began to vibrate on a different frequency. And the universe responded with the emergence of new opportunities. I recall one particular night. I was utterly exhausted, my body aching and my hands raw. I settled into bed and reflected, what's the reason to keep going? And, suddenly, something inside me responded, because now you hold the conviction of your capability. That certainty gave me the impetus to continue. I realized that transformation doesn't happen when you achieve your goal, but when you become the person who believes they can achieve it. What's fascinating is that once your mind aligns with this new identity, effort stops feeling like a burden. You no longer resist the world, you move in sync with it. Opportunities begin to emerge in unpredictable ways, and the right people show up at the precise moment. I started attracting clients who offered higher compensation, who recommended me to others, and my business flourished almost effortlessly. The turning point came when I stopped seeing myself as just an office cleaner and started to envision myself as the owner of a thriving business. This is the essence of the law of resonance. It's not about aspiring, it's about transforming yourself. The moment you change internally, the cosmos has no choice but to mirror that transformation. This is because it is impartial, it simply reacts to your frequency. Today, as I look back, I see that the real shift didn't occur when I started earning financial resources, but when I stopped feeling disadvantaged. The money was merely an effect. True prosperity emerged the instant I began to consider myself worthy of it. And that's exactly what changes everything. You don't have to wait to exist. It is imperative that you exist now. Because, by becoming the frequency of what you desire, the entire universe conspires to convert that frequency into your new reality. For a long time, I held on to the belief that hard work was the only path to changing my life. Work harder, study more deeply, speed up the pace. I assumed that the more energy I poured into my environment, the greater the return the world would give me. However, the truth is, I was trying to mend the reflection instead of fixing the representation. The problem was never external, it was always within. I saw intelligent, diligent, well-intentioned individuals who spent years trying to alter their financial conditions, their relationships, their physical well-being, yet they remained stuck in the same place. It seemed as though an invisible force was dragging them back. And then I understood, they were manipulating the outcome, not the origin. The root of everything invariably lies within your psyche. Every element in your tangible world is a direct mirror of the beliefs and frequencies you cultivate. And the most intriguing thing is that most people strive to change their lives through actions that stem from an outdated mindset, and that never produces results. It's like trying to change your reflection by pushing on the glass surface. You can exhaust yourself from insisting, but the projection only transforms when you alter the manifestation. The intellect operates precisely this way. I made this very mistake for many years. I longed for greater fortune, but I persisted in believing it was hard to achieve. I desired affection, yet I secretly harbored the notion that no one would be able to understand me. I aspired to autonomy, but I felt guilty whenever I set aside time for myself. This internal incongruity was what kept me chained. I would say, I want, but what my subconscious mind truly asserted was, I am incapable. And it is always the subconscious that prevails. It's remarkable how silently transmitted beliefs shape our reality. From childhood, we hear assertions like, money doesn't buy happiness, you have to suffer to succeed, life is a struggle. Such concepts take root and become programmed schemas that determine the limit of what you allow life to present to you. And even if your aspiration is the opposite, the frequency you maintain within persistently communicates a message of lack to the cosmos. The outcome? Recurring scenarios, similar disappointments, and a path that seems endless. The moment I began to contemplate this clearly, an impactful revelation presented itself. Failure, apprehension, and paralysis were not punishments, they were merely reiterations. The subconscious mind isn't ethical, it doesn't differentiate between good and bad, only what's familiar. It reproduces what it identifies as safe. Therefore, if you grew up witnessing deprivation, if you became accustomed to the notion that that's just how it is, the subconscious assimilates that subsisting with scarce resources is the norm, and it will make every effort to keep you in that condition, even if, consciously, you claim to desire the opposite. This is why a vast number of individuals live in a cycle of ups and downs. They acquire resources, then dissipate them. They start a romantic relationship, then sabotage it. They undertake an initiative, then abandon it along the way. The issue isn't a lack of aptitude, but rather the underlying algorithm at work. The conscious intellect declares, we will progress, yet the subconscious retorts, that represents a risk. And the organism, which submits to the subconscious will, reacts with fear, procrastination, demotivation, uncertainty. It's like driving a vehicle with the handbrake engaged. You push hard, but you stay stuck. I had to experience this firsthand to understand. There was a period when I devised ambitious projects, but invariably found an excuse not to materialize them. When I finally discerned the pattern, I chose to alter my method. Instead of trying to modify the outcome, I began to transform my feelings and beliefs. I started monitoring my thoughts and identifying those that restricted me. Every time I caught myself uttering, "I'm not capable, it's complicated, this isn't for me," I broke the chain and verbalized aloud, "That's merely an idea, not a reality." Gradually, this simple routine began to reconfigure how I perceived the world. My emotions began a transmutation. And it is precisely this that most people fail to grasp: a thought devoid of emotion generates absolutely nothing. It is emotion that breathes life into the conception. For this reason, I began to cultivate feelings of self-confidence, even in the absence of external reasons for such. I practiced gratitude for small things, like the morning sun or a warm cup of coffee. And the more I experienced gratitude, the more reasons I had to remain thankful. Life responded. The occupation that previously seemed arduous began to unfold with ease. The individuals around me started interacting differently, more receptive, more courteous. I realized that the global scenario hadn't changed, I had transformed, and the environment merely mirrored it. It was at this point that I understood one of the most profound maxims: you don't attract what you want, you attract what you embody. From this milestone onward, everything acquired logic. I abandoned the practice of attributing blame to circumstances, to the past, to fortune, or to fate. For I understood that, as long as I projected influence outside of myself, I would remain subordinate to it. Authentic metamorphosis begins when you assume full responsibility for your life. Not out of remorse, but out of autonomy. Because, if the origin resides internally, then the prerogative to alter it also lies there. When you change the resonance, reality is compelled to react. It's a principle. Just like gravity, it doesn't err. And the magnificence of this resides in the fact that the journey is intrinsic, discrete, individual. You don't have to persuade anyone, nor demonstrate anything. You just need to harmonize with the new frequency and persevere in it, even if the outcomes haven't manifested. That's because they always come. And, when they come, they resemble prodigies. But they are not. They are solely the projection of the new representation you began to cultivate within yourself. Reality is a mirror that never lies. The cosmos doesn't give you what you yearn for, it delivers what you are being. And when you truly grasp that, the dynamic changes. You stop battling with the mirror and begin to reshape the representation. And, from then on, everything starts to unfold. There was a period when I held the conviction that external factors were responsible for all the events that befell me. When something went awry, I directed the blame externally, to the government, the commercial sector, the financial system, my supervisor, and even chance. It was easier to assume that the error lay in something over which I had no control. That way, I didn't need to introspect. However, this conviction came at a cost. As long as I supposed that the influence resided outside of me, I became a prisoner of it. I had no idea that, by relinquishing responsibility, I was also surrendering my creative power. Most human beings proceed this way without realizing it. They complain about life, about the scarcity of opportunities, about the past, about childhood, about everything that seems beyond their capacity to master. And this is understandable, for it is distressing to face the mirror and realize that the life one possesses is, in fact, the mirror of what one deems oneself worthy of. I, too, initially resisted this concept. When I heard someone affirm that all the events that befell me were my responsibility, I experienced anger. I reflected, how can I be responsible for something I didn't even choose? However, with the passage of time, I understood that responsibility has absolutely nothing to do with blame. It all ties into taking charge. The word accountability transformed my entire trajectory. Because the moment you declare, I am accountable, you're simultaneously proclaiming, I can change. And that's precisely when the dynamic shifts. When you perceive the world as being against you, your life becomes a constant state of self-defense. But the moment you recognize yourself as the creator, everything transforms. You stop fighting against life and begin to collaborate with it. Your energetic vibration undergoes a complete shift. I recall a period when every single thing seemed to go wrong. I was deeply in debt, with no clear path forward, and each day felt like a struggle just to survive. There were times I'd sit at nightfall and ask, why is this happening to me? I searched everywhere for someone or something to blame, until one day, utterly worn out by constant setbacks, a realization struck me: as long as I kept blaming external factors, nothing would ever change. So, for the first time ever, I asked myself a different question: what within me is creating this situation? That simple shift in focus was like lighting a match in a pitch-black room. I understood that if I was subconsciously creating a life of limitations, I was also capable of consciously building a life of abundance. It was at that very moment that I started taking full accountability, not just for my actions, but for my thoughts and emotions as well. I grasped that everything originates there. Every thought is a seed planted in the soil of the mind, and, sooner or later, it blossoms. What comes to fruition is shaped by the quality of that seed. I began to observe what I was planting daily. The complaints, the hesitations, the negative self-talk, the fears, all of it was energy projected into the cosmos. And the cosmos, ever loyal and balanced, simply returned the same. Embracing self-responsibility felt uncomfortable at first. It's akin to taking off a mask you've worn for a very long time and realizing the face beneath it needs care. Yet, it was liberating. Because once you understand that you are the creator of everything, you unlock the power to change every single aspect. Nothing outside of you needs to shift, only your inner world. I remember the first time I intentionally adopted this mindset. A critical deal was on the verge of falling through, and my old self would have instantly blamed the buyer, the market, or a destiny. Instead, I paused and asked myself, what energy am I radiating right now? I realized I was operating from a place of fear, trying to force the outcome, and that was creating a blockage. I took a deep breath, centered myself, and decided to proceed with unwavering conviction, trusting that the best possible result would unfold. And that's precisely what happened. The deal not only succeeded but opened doors to even more opportunities. It wasn't the external circumstances that changed, it was me. Many people mistakenly equate responsibility with control. They assume that being responsible means micromanaging every detail, every person, every situation. But that's not the truth at all. True responsibility means understanding that you construct your own reality through the energetic frequency you maintain. It's not about dominating the external world, but about harmonizing your inner one. When you shift what you're experiencing internally, the cosmos naturally adjusts your external experiences to match. Modern science now validates what once seemed purely philosophical wisdom. Neuroscience shows that thoughts and emotions literally sculpt the brain's architecture, forging connections that define our behaviors and perceptions. In other words, what you consistently think about becomes the blueprint that governs your existence. And quantum physics confirms that the observer influences the outcome. This means the way you look at the world literally changes what you experience from it. You are the architect, the craftsman, and the creation, all at once. Self-accountability marks the threshold between powerlessness and potency. When you see yourself as a victim, every obstacle feels like a punishment. However, when you embrace the role of creator, every challenge transforms into an opportunity for growth. And that's when genuine progress truly begins. Resistance falls away, and you start to flow. I realized that life always responds to my deepest energetic frequency, not just my spoken words. So, when something didn't go my way, instead of asking, why is this happening to me? I started asking, what is the purpose of this happening? This single question completely shifts your perspective. It steers you toward seeking the lesson, rather than finding fault. And once you assimilate the lesson, the situation naturally resolves itself. Over time, this way of thinking became second nature. Now, when something doesn't unfold as planned, I don't give in to despair. I observe, tune my frequency, and trust in the flow. Because I understand that nothing manifests against me, everything unfolds for my highest good. And this isn't just an empty belief, it's a profound understanding of the law of correspondence. The cosmos doesn't make mistakes. It simply reflects back what you emanate. The moment you embrace this perspective, life becomes a clear mirror. You begin to see a reflection of yourself in every circumstance. And that's when true empowerment begins, when you understand that everything is a reverberation, you stop reacting and start consciously creating. It's at this stage that magic truly manifests, not from external sources, but from within. Because when you change what resides in your inner world, what's outside has no other choice but to transform in kind. If you've made it this far, it's because a part of you has already begun to awaken. And I want you to recognize that, because this simple fact proves that your transformation is already in motion. Most people don't reach this stage, because fear, hesitation, and procrastination cause them to give up before they even start. But you are here, listening, feeling, and that means something deep inside has already decided to change. So, before we go any further, I want to make one simple request. If this message resonates with you, if it touches you in any way, please take a moment to hit the like button and subscribe to this channel. Do it not just for me, but for yourself. By doing so, you send a clear signal to the universe that you are ready to expand, that you are committed to your growth. This simple action is a symbolic way of saying, yes, I choose to move forward. Now, let's dive even deeper. Because what comes next demands your full attention. Have you ever noticed how most people long to change their lives but continue to repeat the same feelings day after day? They wake up, complain, feel stressed, dwell on problems, worry about the future, and relive the past. Their mind expresses a desire for progress, yet their body is conditioned to old emotions. It's like trying to drive a brand new car with the handbrake still engaged. You press the accelerator, but you go nowhere. That's what I observed when reflecting on my own journey. I claimed I wanted to evolve, to flourish, to live in abundance, but my daily feelings resonated with scarcity, anxiety, and uncertainty. I had developed the habit of waiting for the outcome before I would allow myself to feel good. And it's precisely this flawed logic that traps so many. They condition their emotions to results, when in fact, results stem from emotion. Life always responds to the frequency you hold in the present, not the one you project for the future. I had to learn this firsthand. I remember a period when I was desperately fighting for my business to succeed. Every single day, I'd repeat positive affirmations and visualize triumph, but deep down, I felt anxious, frustrated, and terrified of failure. And naturally, the universe responded precisely to that frequency. Nothing seemed to progress, deals were postponed, people vanished. Until, one day, completely exhausted, I realized I was trying to attract abundance while radiating scarcity. I was saying I want, but the underlying feeling was I don't have. That's when I decided to shift my focus. Instead of chasing what was missing, I began to cultivate gratitude for what I already possessed. Initially, it felt like a forced exercise. Every morning, I would sit down and mentally list everything I was grateful for: my health, my work, the food on my table, even the challenges, because they were teaching me. Gradually, I noticed a powerful phenomenon unfolding. My body began to relax, my mind became clearer, and circumstances started to unfold with greater ease. What once felt blocked began to flow. Gratitude shifted my frequency, and that frequency changed the outcome. Emotion is the driving force behind creation. Thoughts are directives, but it's the feeling that injects life into those instructions. When thought and emotion are in alignment, you achieve congruence, and it's at that point that the seemingly unattainable begins to become achievable. The cosmos doesn't understand words, it understands frequency. It's as if you're constantly broadcasting a wave, and life, like a perfect mirror, sends back the resonance of that signal. People don't realize it, but every single day they are sending out signals of lack, fear, and disbelief. And then they wonder why their circumstances don't change. I lived that way myself for a very long time. Until I realized that I didn't need to wait to experience abundance. I could feel it right away. I could conduct my life as if I were already wealthy, as if I already possessed everything I desired. And the moment I started acting and feeling that way, the world began to align itself. It's quite enchanting, yet it's not magic, it's a fundamental principle. Science unequivocally confirms this. Neuroscience investigations demonstrate that the brain doesn't distinguish between what is imagined and what is concrete. If you visualize something with strong emotion, the identical brain regions become active as if the event were actually taking place. This means that by experiencing gratitude and joy for something that hasn't yet materialized, you are quite literally instructing your body and consciousness to live out that new reality. You are developing the neurological and energetic pathway that will enable its manifestation. However, here's the most crucial aspect: this demands perseverance. It's not effective to practice for just one day and then abandon it the next. It is imperative to train your body to experience serenity, even when conditions indicate the complete opposite. This is belief, not a belief without reason, but a profound, resonant conviction that underpins the feeling of what remains invisible. Once I embraced this way of being, everything transformed. Opportunities were no longer something I needed to pursue, they began to come to me. The right individuals appeared, novel ideas emerged, and pathways opened up spontaneously. All of this materialized not because my external environment changed, but because I shifted how I resonated within myself. The truth is, life doesn't test you, it mirrors you. Every challenge is a reflection of the energy you emit. Once you grasp this, the struggle ends, and you begin to fine-tune your frequency. You no longer try to control the external, you learn to master the internal. So, if something within you signals readiness for more, do not ignore that inner voice. It is the highest part of your being asking for growth. Allow yourself to feel, in this very moment, the emotion you desire to experience. Feel the freedom, the love, the prosperity, as if they already existed. And sustain that state for as long as you possibly can. Because when your feeling shifts, reality has no choice, it must transform as well. And if you've connected with this message so far, remember, expansion is a daily choice. It is not enough to simply understand, you must apply it. Go ahead and like this content, subscribe to the channel, and continue with me on this journey. Because the simple act of agreeing to your own advancement is the inaugural step to unlocking doors that have always been awaiting just one thing: your proper vibration. There's a significant difference between merely thinking and truly experiencing. For a long time, I believed that simply changing my thoughts would transform my existence. I filled my mind with optimistic affirmations, read books, and repeated positive statements in front of the mirror, yet nothing seemed to genuinely advance. It was then that I realized the issue wasn't what I was mentally conceiving, but rather what I was feeling. I would affirm to myself that I was prosperous, but internally, I emitted insecurity. I spoke of abundance, but my body was habituated to scarcity. And that's precisely where most people find themselves stuck. They attempt to construct a new reality using the same old emotional landscape. The cosmos doesn't react to words, it responds to energy. And energy is the direct result of what you experience. When there's a divergence between what you think and what you feel, your electromagnetic field divides. It's akin to attempting to move in two directions simultaneously. The mind declares, I want, the heart whispers, I can't, and the entire organism becomes confused. This lack of harmonization generates a significant obstacle. And that obstacle is precisely what keeps you trapped in the same place, even when you're doing everything you believe to be correctly. I had to learn to synchronize my thoughts and emotions. And that profound lesson didn't come from books, it emerged from hardship. I vividly recall one evening sitting on the sofa, utterly frustrated. I had diligently done everything I was taught, I visualized, I declared, I planned. Yet, nothing seemed to manifest. It was then that I grasped something remarkably simple, yet deeply profound. I was attempting to feel something new while using the very same body that still harbored the emotions of the past. My body simply did not trust the words of my mind. it was still anchored to an old frequency, and that frequency was entirely incompatible with the life I aspired to create. The body stores memories. Each emotion you reiterate, every fear, every doubt, becomes ingrained within it as an automatic routine. And your body becomes habituated to these emotions, turning them into a default state. If you are accustomed to experiencing worry, anxiety, or guilt, your body will seek out these sensations daily, because it's within them that it feels safe. Even if you consciously aspire to change, the body insists on reverting to what is known. This is precisely why so many people abandon their journey halfway through, not because they lack the desire, but because their body has not been taught how to experience something truly new. It was then that I realized I needed to teach my physical self to believe what my mind already recognized. I began practicing what I call emotional alignment. Every single day, I would sit in silence and breathe deeply. Instead of dwelling on how things currently were, I focused intently on how I desired them to be. I imagined that I had already achieved everything I wished for and allowed that feeling to blossom within me. I didn't merely think about abundance, I felt it. And the more profoundly I felt it, the more my body began to accept that new frequency. In the initial days, it was incredibly challenging. My body resisted fiercely. It would whisper, "This isn't real, look at your current situation, check your bank statement." But I persisted. I knew that if I could sustain that new emotional state for sufficient time, my body would eventually come to believe it. And that is precisely what transpired. One day, I observed that the inner restlessness had diminished. I felt more serene, more secure, more receptive. And, interestingly, it was during this period that I began to attract circumstances and individuals who vibrated at the exact same frequency as my newly cultivated emotion. Science elucidates this with remarkable clarity. The heart possesses over 40,000 neurons and transmits more impulses to the brain than the reverse. When the heart and brain are in perfect consonance, when your thoughts and feelings vibrate at the exact same frequency, your entire organism enters a state of profound harmony. In this state, your energy expands, your electromagnetic field strengthens, and the universe responds almost instantaneously. Opportunities arise, ideas flow effortlessly, and decisions become crystal clear. This is not magic, it is fundamental physics. But to reach this stage, you must cultivate presence. You need to observe what you are experiencing. How many times each day do you catch yourself feeling distressed, anxious, or fearful about something that hasn't even materialized yet? Every single time you do this, you are reaffirming your old reality. And the cosmos, which remains neutral, simply responds, yes, to whatever you emit. If you vibrate with worry, it grants you more reasons to be concerned. But when you consciously choose to feel gratitude, trust, and love, even without any apparent external reason, the universe responds, yes, to that as well. I experienced this firsthand. I recall a moment when I was on the verge of giving up on a particular endeavor. I felt that everything had come to a standstill. So I paused and asked myself, if I had already achieved what I desire, how would I feel right now? I closed my eyes and allowed that sensation to completely fill me. It was a blend of peace, relief, and enthusiasm. And I sustained that state for a few minutes, without forcing anything, simply feeling. 2 hours later, I received a call that entirely altered the trajectory of that project. It wasn't mere coincidence. It was pure resonance. This is how the universe operates, it returns to you what you emanate. It's not about yearning, it's about vibrating. When the feeling aligns with the thought, energy flows freely, and reality responds with exactitude. The problem is that most people live in internal conflict. They desire love, but they feel fear. They seek capital, but they feel remorse. They long for freedom, but they feel uncertainty. As long as the heart and mind are pulling in opposite directions, life will continue to be stagnant. But when you manage to unite what you think with what you feel, the improbable truly begins to manifest. It is in this precise state that intuition awakens, synchronicities effortlessly occur, and solutions appear as if from thin air. Because there is no longer any resistance, there is only pure fluidity. You cease being someone who constantly searches and instead become someone who effortlessly attracts. And the most enchanting part is that this coherence isn't a final destination, it's an ongoing practice. You can begin right now. Observe how you are feeling in this very moment. Breathe and ask yourself, what do I truly wish to feel? Then, simply feel it. Don't think, feel. Do this every single day, until that new feeling becomes second nature. When your body finally accepts this new emotion, you will no longer need to struggle to change reality. It will transform all by itself, because your vibration will already be fundamentally altered. This is the true metamorphosis, when thought ceases to be a mere concept and transforms into a deeply felt experience. When the mind and heart dance in perfect rhythm, the cosmos harmonizes with you entirely. And, in that state, absolutely nothing is unattainable. Throughout my journey, I've observed something quite intriguing. Success is not intrinsically linked to one's intellectual capacity, their background, or even the opportunities they are given. I've encountered remarkably intelligent individuals, armed with diplomas, talents, and immense potential, who nonetheless lived confined to a mediocre existence, perpetually struggling to cover their expenses, consistently exhausted, and forever telling themselves that, one day everything will change. Conversely, I have also met humble individuals, possessing little formal education, who built empires, achieved true autonomy, and radiated a sense of self-assurance and peace that countless others spend their entire lives seeking. This led me to ponder, what truly sets these people apart? Over time, I discovered it wasn't about knowledge, but rather their level of consciousness. And consciousness begins with the way you perceive yourself. The difference between those who grow and those who remain static lies in the belief they hold about themselves. Those who believe they are worthy, capable, and sufficient act in alignment with this conviction. Conversely, those who carry a feeling of unworthiness live in continuous self-sabotage, even if unconsciously. The universe responds to vibration, and vibration emanates from one's self-image. And it was by observing this that I noticed something inspiring in the journey of a woman I deeply admire, Oprah Winfrey. She was born into destitution, faced abuse, encountered prejudice and rejection. Everything around her suggested she would have no opportunity whatsoever. Yet, at a certain moment, she made a choice. She determined that the opinions of others would not define her. Oprah turned inward and built a renewed perception of herself, an ideal of strength, honor, and purpose. And it was from this newly acquired identity that she transformed her own existence and, subsequently, the existence of millions of individuals. Such is the capacity to alter one's own life narrative. She did not change the global landscape to then modify herself, she transformed herself, and the universe aligned with her new persona. This is how the cosmos operates. By changing internally, external reality has no other option but to mirror that transformation. The earthly sphere is simply a mirror of your energy. I have witnessed such phenomena countless times, not only in notable personalities, but in everyday individuals, in students and companions who, for the first time, chose to see themselves from another perspective. Individuals who, for many years, hid behind fear, remorse, confrontation with others, until at one given moment they declared, enough. I determined to be who I genuinely am. And it was at that point, in that simple gesture of embracing a new identity, that their lives began to move forward. For the reality is that you will never be able to transcend the perception you hold of yourself. If, deep within you, resides the conviction that you are not capable enough, the cosmos will take it upon itself to validate that idea, repeatedly, until you decide to alter the paradigm. For this reason, many dedicate themselves with fervor, toil incessantly, yet do not progress. They seek to build a remarkable existence, while maintaining a restricted conception of their own essence. And such an achievement is unattainable. Oprah's journey is impactful because it reveals something we all carry within us, the prerogative to choose who we wish to become. You may have come into the world in circumstances of scarcity, you may have been overlooked, discredited, you may have failed countless times, yet, none of these experiences determine what you have the potential to be. Past history is an indication, not a fatality. What shapes your future is the perception you hold currently, at this precise moment, about yourself. I recall a period of my existence in which I found myself entirely bound to the notion that I was not enough. I observed others and incessantly compared myself. Constantly it seemed they were at a more advanced stage, more capable, more worthy. And the more I engaged in comparison, the more insignificant I perceived myself to be. It was at that point that I understood, I emitted an energy of inferiority, and the cosmos returned precisely the same to me. My achievements were modest, my opportunities limited, for my energy communicated, I am not enough. The moment I chose to break with this dynamic was the initial milestone of all change. I stopped asking, how do I proceed to achieve what I desire, and began asking, who must I become for this to manifest naturally in my journey? This inquiry redefined my future. For it shifted me from the frequency of effort and inserted me into the frequency of growth. You do not magnetize what you crave, you attract what you internalize yourself to be. And this conviction does not reside in the verbalizations you utter, but in the emotion you carry when there are no observers. It is what you hold as true about yourself when in solitude, when looking in the mirror, when absent of any praise, when nothing seems to prosper. It is at that instant that the essence of your energy manifests. The metamorphosis begins when you allow yourself to perceive your own worth before the world validates it. When you choose to feel worthy without the demand for external validations. It is this that generates the strength which summons propitious situations. Oprah did not wait for the world to place faith in her to believe in herself, she was the pioneer in this action. And it was for this reason that the earthly sphere subsequently endorsed her. It was observed that prosperity is a mirror of essence, and not merely of activity. One can execute numerous actions, but if the identity belongs to someone who fears, hesitates, or feels diminished, the vitality of their actions will be inconsistent. However, if the action is undertaken from the knowledge of one who already possesses worth, everything one accomplishes acquires potency. Purpose harmonizes, realization unfolds, paths are revealed. And the magnificence resides in the fact that any individual can effect this alteration. One single moment of deliberation is sufficient. It is necessary to cease the reiteration of the old narrative. Cease affirming that you are incapable, that time has run out, that you need more fortune, more hours, more erudition. What is necessary is that you perceive yourself as someone who is already enough at this instant. For existence will invariably reflect what you conceive as viable for yourself. The inquiry I present to you is straightforward. If you truly believed you were worthy of everything you desire, what would transform today? How would you proceed? In what manner would you express yourself? What decisions would you make? Begin acting in this manner immediately. The energetic frequency precedes manifestation. And, by modifying your energy, reality is compelled to follow the new rhythm of your perception. There is an imperceptible power that guides all beings, including those who profess disbelief in anything. This power is the archetype, a cluster of convictions, customs, and ways of seeing so intrinsically fixed that they become automated. It functions like software operating in the background, managing your concepts, your emotions, and your deliberations, without you noticing it. And it is precisely for this reason that, frequently, even with the impetus to change, you encounter the repetition of the same patterns, the attraction of identical circumstances, the experience of the same restrictions. For the archetype, if not deliberately transformed, replicates the past in the present and labels it as fate. I experienced this imprisonment for many years. And the most pernicious aspect of the archetype is that it persuades you that you hold control. You believe you are making logical choices, but, in reality, you are merely following an old mold. It incites you to distrust the new, to hinder progress, to legitimize fear. How many occasions have you desired to take one step towards something greater, but an inner voice whispered, "What if it fails? What if it's not for you?" This voice is the reverberation of the archetype trying to keep you stagnant, for, from its perspective, the unknown appears as danger. And the reality is that a large part of people never break free from this pattern. They subsist imprisoned by old programmings, reiterating narratives received from past generations. They grow up hearing that wealth is complex, that success is for a minority, that genuine affection does not manifest, and they dedicate their existence to subconsciously proving that these assertions are true. It is as if they are magnetized by archaic concepts, unable to notice that the solution always resided within them. The same happened with one of the greatest figures in popular music, Michael Jackson. A resplendent artist, creative intelligence that captivated the globe. Yet, behind all the splendor, there existed one individual who never managed to free himself from an afflicting archetype. From a tender age, he was programmed to conceive that his worth was linked to impeccability, consent, and victory. Each round of applause nourished a feeling of acceptance, but each censure submerged him in remorse and uncertainty. And even though he possessed renown, wealth, and aptitude, his psyche remained tied to the convictions of childhood, the convictions that he needed to incessantly prove his worth. This disconnect between intrinsic ability and the archetype is what dilapidates countless lives. For it is possible to achieve all desires, but if, at the core, one still carries a conviction of inadequacy, one will never reach fullness. Cognition does not differentiate one material captivity from one psychological incarceration, both restrict equally. Michael held the universe at his feet, but was unable to find serenity within himself. And this represents one of the most profound human tragedies: individuals who reach the pinnacle, but persist in a sensation of emptiness, since the old archetype was never healed. The archetype is insidious. It does not scream, it whispers. It camouflages itself as rationality, as caution, as common sense. When you decide on a change, it does not seek to explicitly block you, it merely leads you to uncertainty. It persuades you to await the opportune moment, to believe that you need more training, more monetary resources, more time. However, its real intention is that you never move. And, while you wait, existence flows. I was compelled to confront my own archetypes to assimilate this truth. Upon commencing the study of Think and Grow Rich, I had already determined a turning point in my life. However, I promptly noticed that erudition, in isolation, would not suffice. I devoured texts, absorbed concepts, and intellectually agreed, yet in practice, I continued to operate in the same old ways. It was then I grasped a crucial insight: an archetype isn't dismantled by data, it transforms through consistent repetition and deep feeling. It's essential to rewire your mind, day after day, until the new perspective arises naturally. I began to speak aloud, daily, affirmations about the person I wished to become, not mechanically, but deeply internalizing every word. And whenever my old thought patterns tried to pull me back, I persisted. Over time, those outdated beliefs started to fade. This is how an archetype unravels, not with a single, extraordinary feat, but with consistent, smaller choices, repeated until the new becomes more ingrained than the old. Neural science illuminates this phenomenon. Every idea forms a neural pathway, and the more you revisit an idea, the stronger that pathway becomes. Thus, changing a mental pattern is like carving a new neural path, initially challenging, but with dedication, the new root solidifies and the old one dissolves. This is why transformation doesn't happen overnight. It requires persistence, repetition, and faith. The pattern is like a hidden code you inherited without choosing, yet you possess the power to alter it. And it all begins when you choose to examine your own beliefs. Ask yourself, what are my true perceptions about finances? About love? About success? About myself? You'll be surprised to find that many of these beliefs aren't even yours, they're ancestral notions, absorbed from others, from past experiences, from your surrounding cultural environment. True autonomy isn't about acting on every impulse, but about choosing what you believe. Because as long as your convictions are merely inherited, your existence will mirror someone else's. Authentic growth emerges when you declare, I choose which truths to embrace. When you do this, the old belief system starts to crumble. However, it's crucial to remember, the old paradigm will try to pull you back. It will test your resolve. It will place obstacles in your path, making you doubt if you're headed in the right direction. It's at this stage that you must remain unshaken, because each time you resist the old tendency, you are solidifying the new alignment. Life rewards perseverance. You don't need to fight the old mental framework, it's enough to stop feeding it. Empower the new. Think like someone who has already achieved victory. Feel like someone who has already triumphed. Act like someone who is already free. And, over time, the archaic model will simply cease to exist, because it only maintains its power as long as you place your faith in it. Michael Jackson's story reveals what happens when genius overshadows self-awareness. Visible success doesn't equate to inner freedom. Thus, it's not merely about changing your actions, but about remodeling your innermost self. True fulfillment begins when you stop being chained to outdated patterns and become the conscious architect of your own psyche. And when this happens, you uncover something remarkable. The entire world transforms, not because it has changed itself, but because you finally begin to perceive it through the lens of liberation. As you start to contemplate existence from this new perspective, everything takes on a different meaning. The very same circumstances that once seemed like impediments become opportunities, the fears that once paralyzed you transform into signs of progress, and the people around you begin to reflect the new energy you radiate. The reality is that the cosmos never stopped responding. It was merely waiting for the moment you would choose to see beyond superficialities and trust in the power that has always resided within you. At this moment, I want to extend an invitation to you. If anything in these reflections resonated with your soul, if you realize this message has the power to inspire a loved one, please share this audiovisual content with that individual. Perhaps they are waiting precisely for this, a reminder of their capabilities, their chance to restart, that there's still a vastness of experiences to enjoy. I express my deep gratitude for staying with me up to this point, for granting me access to your psyche and, for a few brief moments, allowing me to communicate directly with your spirit. Continue on this journey of expansion, for every move you make towards your most sublime perception is a step that brings all of humanity closer to transformation. I look forward to seeing you in the next video. There's much more to explore, and together, we will continue to progress, one idea at a time.